Are you tired of spending your hard-earned money on expensive chemical fertilizers only to get a mediocre harvest of tomatoes and cucumbers? What if I told you that the ultimate secret to an explosive, massive harvest is currently sitting in your fire pit, completely free? Today, we are talking about a controversial gardening secret that big agricultural companies and garden centers are desperately trying to hide from you. I am talking about the incredible power of fermented wood ash. Just one single cup of this homemade liquid gold can completely transform your vegetable beds, your berry bushes, and your fruit trees. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will never look at a pile of leftover ashes the same way again. In fact, you will be begging your neighbors for their leftover wood ash. But here is the catch. Most gardeners just dump raw ash directly onto their soil, which is a huge mistake. I bet half of the people watching this video either throw their ash in the trash or misuse it in the garden. Tell me in the comments right now, what do you usually do with your wood ash? Let us dive into the secret science of lazy, high-yield gardening. Before we reveal the secret recipe, we need to understand a little bit of plant biology and history. Think of a tree as a massive living solar battery. For decades, a tree pulls precious minerals deep from the earth using its vast root system. It pulls up calcium, potassium, magnesium, and dozens of trace elements. It stores all of these vital nutrients inside its wood. When you burn that wood in your stove or fire pit, the fire burns away the carbon and the organic matter. What is left behind in the ash is pure concentrated earth magic. It is a dense collection of every single mineral that the tree spent its entire life collecting. Historically, our ancestors knew this. They used ash to grow massive crops without ever visiting a store. But there is a massive difference between raw ash and fermented ash. Raw ash is like a locked treasure chest. The nutrients are there, but they are very hard for your young vegetable plants to digest and absorb. If you just sprinkle it on the ground, most of it washes away or gets locked in the soil. To get that explosive growth, we have to unlock the chest. And the key to that lock is the ancient process of fermentation. Let us start by looking at the modern gardening trap. Every spring, millions of gardeners rush to the local garden center. They fill their carts with expensive bottles of liquid fertilizers. They buy special tomato food. They buy fancy fruit tree boosters. We have been brainwashed into thinking that growing massive crops requires spending a fortune. But this is exactly what the big agricultural companies want you to believe. They want you stuck in a cycle of buying their chemical products year after year. If you knew the truth, their profits would crash overnight. The reality is that nature has already provided everything your garden needs. And the best part is that it is completely free. We are going to break that expensive cycle today. Imagine saving hundreds of dollars every single season. Imagine never having to drag heavy bags of commercial fertilizer to your garden beds again. The secret weapon is already sitting in your backyard. But taking that raw material and turning it into plant superfood requires one specific, secret step. Without this step, you're just throwing dust in the wind. Let me show you how to unlock the true power of your garden. So, what exactly is the problem with raw wood ash? Why can you not just dump buckets of it around your apple trees and call it a day? The answer lies in the chemistry of your soil. Raw wood ash is highly alkaline. If you apply too much of it at once, it can severely alter the acid balance of your garden beds. This sudden change shocks the soil microorganisms. It can actually burn the delicate, microscopic feeder roots of your tomato and cucumber plants. Even worse, when the soil becomes too alkaline, it creates a chemical lock. Essential nutrients like iron and phosphorus become completely unavailable to your plants. Your plants could be sitting in a pool of nutrients and still starve to death. This is why many beginner gardeners see yellowing leaves after applying too much dry ash. They think they're helping, but they are actually hurting their harvest. We need a smart approach. We need a lazy approach that guarantees results without the risk of destroying our soil structure. This is where the magic of biology comes in to save the day. This brings us to the miraculous process of fermentation. Fermentation is the secret bridge between raw minerals and explosive plant growth. When we ferment the ash, we are essentially pre-digesting it for the plants. Think of your garden soil as a giant stomach. If you feed it hard, raw rocks, it struggles to process them. But if you feed it a nutrient-rich, biologically active soup, it absorbs everything instantly. Fermentation uses beneficial bacteria and organic acids to break down the harsh alkaline nature of the ash. It neutralizes the danger while extracting 100% of the potassium and calcium. The liquid becomes highly bioavailable. This means the moment it touches the roots, the plant drinks it up like a massive energy drink. The results are almost instantaneous. Within just a few days, you will notice the leaves turning a deep, rich green. The stems will grow incredibly thick. The plant will suddenly have the energy to push out dozens of new flowers. This is the secret that turns an average gardener into a master grower with zero extra physical labor. Let us talk about the star player in this fermented mixture. I am talking about potassium. Potassium is the absolute king when it comes to fruit production. It is the engine that drives sugar straight into your tomatoes, making them incredibly sweet and juicy. If your tomatoes taste watery or lack flavor, they are starving for potassium. If your cucumbers are deformed or falling off the vine, they are begging for potassium. Big agriculture sells expensive potassium supplements in shiny plastic bottles. But wood ash is naturally loaded with it. By fermenting the ash, we create a liquid potassium concentrate that rivals anything you can buy in a store. When you apply this fermented liquid during the flowering and fruiting stage, the plant shifts into overdrive. It stops focusing on growing useless green leaves and puts all its energy into pumping up the fruit. You will see clusters of tomatoes so heavy that the branches might bend. Your fruit trees will hold on to their blossoms and set record-breaking amounts of fruit. This is the definition of explosive harvest. But potassium is not the only hero in this story. We also have to talk about calcium. Anyone who has ever grown tomatoes knows the heartbreak of blossom end rot. You wait weeks for a beautiful tomato to grow, only to find a nasty black, rotting spot on the bottom. This is caused by a severe lack of calcium reaching the fruit. Now, wood ash contains a massive amount of calcium, but as we discussed earlier, in its raw, dry form, the plant struggles to drink it. The fermentation process uses natural acids to dissolve this calcium into a liquid form. It becomes liquid armor for your vegetables. When you water your plants with fermented ash, the calcium rushes up the stems and goes straight into the developing fruit. The cell walls become incredibly strong. Blossom end rot becomes a thing of the past. Your peppers will be thick and crisp. Your apples will be huge and resistant to bruising. Best of all, this calcium feeds the beneficial earthworms in your soil. You are building a permanent self-sustaining ecosystem right in your backyard. Beyond potassium and calcium, fermented ash provides an incredible cocktail of trace minerals. These are the rare vitamins of the plant world. We are talking about magnesium, zinc, iron, and boron. Commercial fertilizers usually only provide nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. They completely ignore these vital microelements. Without magnesium, plants cannot produce chlorophyll, which means they cannot capture sunlight efficiently. Without boron, fruit trees cannot set their fruit properly. Because wood ash comes from ancient trees that mined deep into the earth, it contains a perfect balance of all these rare elements. When we ferment the ash, we release this multivitamin directly into the water. It acts as a powerful immune system booster for your entire garden. Plants fed with this mixture are far more resistant to diseases like blight and powdery mildew. They can withstand extreme heat and drought much better than artificially fed plants. It is true smart gardening. You are letting the ancient wisdom of the tree protect your modern vegetable garden. Now that you understand the powerful science behind this, let us get into the actual recipe. It is incredibly simple, and it fits perfectly into the lazy gardening philosophy. First, you need to source the right kind of ash. Not all ash is created equal. You must strictly use pure wood ash. Hardwoods like oak, apple, or maple are the absolute best. They contain the highest concentration of minerals. Softwoods like pine will also work, but they are slightly less nutrient-dense. The most important rule is to never use ash from treated lumber, painted wood, or charcoal briquettes. Those contain toxic chemicals and heavy metals that will poison your soil and your food. If you burn clean firewood in your stove over the winter, simply collect the cold ash in a metal bucket. Keep it dry until you're ready to brew your magic fertilizer in the spring. Just one medium-sized bucket of dry ash is enough to feed a huge garden for the entire summer. It is the ultimate free resource for anyone who wants to be self-sufficient. To start the fermentation process, you need a large container. A standard plastic bucket holding about 3 to 5 gallons is perfect. Do not use metal buckets for the fermentation itself, as the biological process can react with the metal. Fill your plastic bucket about 1/3 full with your clean, sifted wood ash. Next, you need water. But please, try to avoid straight tap water if it is heavily chlorinated. Chlorine is designed to kill bacteria, and we need bacteria to make this fermentation work. If you have rain barrels, use rainwater. It is the absolute best choice for organic gardening. If you must use tap water, let it sit in the bucket under the sun for 24 hours, so the chlorine can evaporate. Fill the bucket with water, leaving a few inches of space at the top. Stir the mixture well with a long wooden stick. At this point, you just have wet ash. Now we need to add the biological spark that will ignite the whole process and turn this muddy water into liquid plant gold. To kickstart the fermentation, we need to introduce organic acids and a food source for the good bacteria. This is where the magic happens. You have a few great options here, and they are all things you probably already have lying around. The easiest method is to add a cup of old expired fruit jam or just a cup of plain white sugar. The sugar acts as immediate food for the wild lactic acid bacteria present in the air and on the ash. If you want to make it even more powerful, add a few handfuls of fresh green weeds. Dandelions or stinging nettles are absolutely perfect. The green weeds provide nitrogen and natural enzymes that speed up the breakdown of the alkaline ash. Alternatively, you can pour in a cup of plain yogurt or kefir to introduce millions of beneficial microbes instantly. Some old-school gardeners even add a cup of cheap vinegar to help dissolve the calcium faster. Stir everything vigorously. You are creating a biological soup. Cover the bucket loosely with a cloth to keep the bugs out, but allow the air to flow in. Now comes the easiest part of the lazy gardening method, the waiting game. You need to put your bucket in a warm, sunny spot in your garden. The heat from the sun will accelerate the biological activity. You do not need to do any heavy lifting or digging. Just let nature do the hard work for you. Once a day, take your wooden stick and give the mixture a good deep stir. You want to bring the settled ash up from the bottom and mix it with the oxygen in the water. Within a couple of days, you will start to see the magic happening. You will notice small bubbles rising to the surface. This means the bacteria are alive, they are eating the sugars, and they are producing organic acids. These acids are actively dissolving the hard minerals in the ash. You might also notice a slightly sour, earthy smell. It should not smell like rotting garbage. It should smell like a rich, fermented forest floor. This smell is the absolute proof that your free, high-powered fertilizer is coming to life. The fermentation process usually takes about 10 to 14 days, depending on how warm your weather is. If it is high summer, it might be ready in just 1 week. You will know the liquid gold is ready when the aggressive bubbling stops and the liquid settles. The heavy ash particles will drop to the bottom of the bucket, leaving a dark, amber-colored liquid sitting on top. This dark liquid is the finished product. It is a highly concentrated, bioavailable mineral tonic. It contains all the explosive energy of the tree, perfectly packaged for your vegetables to drink. But listen to me carefully. This liquid is extremely powerful. It is a concentrate. You cannot just pour this straight onto your garden beds. If you do that, it is like giving a human 10 cups of espresso at once. It is simply too much energy. We have to dilute it properly to ensure our plants get a smooth, steady stream of nutrition without burning their delicate roots. Dilution is the secret to safe and effective lazy gardening. Here is the golden rule for dilution. You take exactly 1 single cup of your dark, fermented ash liquid. Be careful not to scoop up the thick mud at the bottom. Just take the clear dark liquid from the top. Pour this 1 cup into a standard 2-gallon watering can. Fill the rest of the watering can with fresh rainwater or dechlorinated tap water. It is a ratio of roughly 1 part fermented ash to 20 or 30 parts water. The water in your can should look like very weak tea. This is the perfect safe strength for all your heavy-feeding vegetables. By diluting it this much, you are making your original bucket of ash go an incredibly long way. That 1 bucket you brewed will easily make hundreds of gallons of premium organic fertilizer. Think about how much money that would cost if you bought it in plastic bottles at the store. It is truly mind-blowing. Now, You are ready to walk through your garden and start feeding your hungry plants. Let us talk about application method number 1. This is the classic soil drench. This method is absolutely perfect for tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and cucumbers. These plants are greedy feeders. They require massive amounts of potassium to produce large harvests. Wait until the soil around your plants is already slightly damp. Never fertilize a plant that is bone dry and wilted, as the roots might take up the nutrients too fast and suffer shock. Take your watering can filled with the diluted ash tea and simply pour it around the base of the plant. Aim for the root zone, keeping the liquid off the main stem. For a large, mature tomato plant, you can easily pour half a gallon of the diluted mixture. For smaller plants, a few cups are enough. The organic acids in the tea will immediately interact with your soil microbes. The roots will absorb the liquid instantly. You should do this soil drench once every 2 weeks. During the peak flowering and fruiting stage, you will not believe the sudden burst of growth. Application method number 2 is the foliar feeding technique. This is an advanced trick used by professional growers, but it is incredibly easy to do. Sometimes your plants need an emergency rescue. Maybe they have been stressed by extreme heat, or maybe you see the first signs of mineral deficiency like pale or yellowing leaves. In these cases, feeding through the roots might take a few days to show results, but plants can actually drink directly through their leaves. To do a foliar feed, you need to dilute the fermented ash even more. Take just half a cup of the liquid and mix it into 2 gallons of water. Strain it very well through a fine cloth so it does not clog your sprayer. Pour it into a garden pump sprayer. Go out early in the morning or late in the evening when the sun is not hot. Spray a fine mist over all the leaves of your tomatoes, cucumbers, and fruit trees. The leaves will absorb the trace minerals within minutes. It is an instant vitamin shot that brings stressed plants back to life instantly. Do not forget about your fruit trees and berry bushes. They absolutely love fermented wood ash. Apple trees, cherry trees, raspberries, and strawberries all require huge amounts of potassium to make sweet, large fruits. For established fruit trees, the lazy gardening method works perfectly. You do not need to dig trenches around the roots. Just take your watering can with the diluted mixture and pour it all around the drip line of the tree. The drip line is the imaginary circle on the ground right under the tips of the longest branches. This is where the active feeder roots live. Give a mature tree 3 or 4 big watering cans full of the mixture in the early summer, right after the blossoms drop. This forces the tree to hold on to its baby fruits instead of dropping them on the ground. For strawberry patches, a light watering with the mixture will make the berries incredibly sweet and firm. You will literally taste the difference in the sugar content of your fruits. Let us look at this from the perspective of the lazy gardener. Our goal is always to get the maximum possible yield with the minimum amount of physical labor. Traditional gardening tells you to double dig your beds, haul heavy bags of compost, and constantly scratch dry fertilizers into the soil surface. That is back-breaking work. With the fermented ash method, you are doing zero heavy lifting. You are simply filling a bucket once, stirring it lightly for a week, and then pouring a liquid. Water flows with gravity. It naturally finds the roots without you needing to lift a shovel. The beneficial bacteria in the liquid act like microscopic workers. They dive deep into the soil and continue breaking down organic matter long after you have finished watering. You are literally building an army of underground helpers. This method saves your back, it saves your wallet, and it drastically increases your harvest. It is the ultimate victory for smart, self-sufficient homesteading. However, to be a true master of this technique, you must avoid a few common mistakes. I already mentioned the danger of using a toxic ash, but let us talk about plant preferences. Not every single plant in your garden wants this alkaline-leaning mineral boost. You must never use fermented ash on acid-loving plants. If you pour this liquid on your blueberries, rhododendrons, or azaleas, you will make them very sick. These plants thrive in low pH soils, and the calcium in the ash will disrupt their delicate systems. Also, avoid using this mixture on young potato plants early in the season, as high alkalinity can encourage potato scab. Stick to the heavy fruiting vegetables. Tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, pumpkins, peppers, and melons are your primary targets. These are the plants that will give you that massive, explosive response. Always observe your plants after the first feeding. They will tell you if they are happy by putting out bright green, vigorous new growth within just a few days. Let us talk about the timeline of this explosive growth. When you apply commercial synthetic fertilizers, you often get a rapid, unnatural spike in green leafy growth followed by a sudden crash. It is like feeding a child pure candy. The fermented ash liquid works completely differently. Because it is biologically active, it creates a sustained release of energy. Within 3 to 5 days of the first application, you will notice the stems of your tomato plants thickening up significantly. Around day 10, you will see a massive flush of new yellow flowers. If you applied it to cucumbers, you will see dozens of tiny baby cucumbers forming at every single leaf joint. By week 3, you will be scrambling to find extra strings and stakes to support the weight of the developing fruit. The branches will literally bow down under the heavy load. This is the moment you realize that all those expensive bottles at the garden center were a complete waste of money. Another incredible benefit of this fermented liquid is pest resistance. Healthy plants naturally repel insects. When a plant is starving for minerals, it emits distress signals that attract aphids, spider mites, and whiteflies. But when a plant is fully pumped full of potassium, calcium, and complex trace minerals from the wood ash, its cellular pressure is extremely high. The sap inside the plant becomes thick and rich. Insects physically struggle to pierce the tough cell walls of a well-fed plant. I have seen entire rows of tomatoes fed with fermented ash remain completely untouched by aphids, while a neglected row right next to them was destroyed. You are not just feeding the plant, you are building its natural armor. This means you do not need to buy toxic chemical pesticides. You are solving 2 major gardening problems with 1 free bucket of leftover campfire ash. It is pure permaculture perfection. So, what do we do with the muddy sludge left at the very bottom of the bucket after we have used all the dark liquid? Do we throw it away? Absolutely not. In the world of lazy, smart gardening, nothing goes to waste. That sludge is still packed with raw calcium and insoluble organic matter. It is a fantastic soil conditioner. You simply take that thick mud and scrape it directly into your compost pile. The high calcium content will help neutralize the acidity of rotting kitchen scraps. The billions of bacteria still living in the mud will act as a supercharger for your compost pile, breaking it down twice as fast. Alternatively, in the late autumn, when all your crops are finished, you can spread that mud over your empty vegetable beds. The winter snow and rain will slowly wash the remaining minerals into the earth, preparing the perfect soil structure for the next spring. Every single ounce of that fire pit ash has been transformed into pure, life-giving energy. The truth is finally out. You now possess the ultimate secret to growing an explosive harvest without spending a single dime on commercial fertilizers. By simply taking ordinary wood ash and unlocking its power through fermentation, you are giving your plants a massive dose of bioavailable potassium, calcium, and essential trace minerals. You are protecting your tomatoes from blossom end rot, supercharging your cucumber vines, and ensuring your fruit trees produce the sweetest, heaviest crops you have ever seen. All of this is achieved with the lazy gardener's approach. No digging, no heavy lifting, and no expensive chemicals. Just water, ash, a little bit of time, and the magic of biology. The big agricultural companies might want to hide this free resource, but now you have the power to be completely self-sufficient. Thank you so much for watching and learning with me today. If this video changed the way you look at your garden, please hit that subscribe button and give the video a like. Share it with your friends so we can all stop wasting money and start growing massive organic harvests. Now, I have a question for you. What type of wood do you usually burn in your fire pit? And what is the first vegetable you're going to feed with this liquid gold? Let me know down in the comments.